I would have never thought growing up, everybody would have laughed to think that people sell water.
In a bottle, in a plastic bottle.
Yeah, nobody would be dumb enough. That'd be like charging you for breathing, you know. And here, now, bottled water is a big business.
Right. Well, the world has changed a lot in the last 92 years. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura, and this is a very special episode. It's a lot different than what I normally do, but I'm really thrilled that I have my 92-year-old grandfather joining me today. We are at his farm in West Virginia in the beautiful mountains, just spending a week visiting, and I wanted him, he is 92, almost 93, a couple of months from being 93, and has lived this wonderful, healthy life. I think he's the strongest person that I know. I just thought it would be really interesting to have a conversation talking about the way that he's lived his life, how he's remained healthy and active well into his 90s, and the type of food that he's eaten, and the way that we've seen the food industry and the food that we eat change over the last many decades. So thanks for joining us today.
Good to be here.
I want to take a little break and share with you that this video is sponsored by Element. We are enjoying this beautiful, cool weather up here in the mountains, and so I'm not sweating quite as much as I normally do. So I am sticking with 1 packet a day of the Element electrolytes, which is just sodium, magnesium, and potassium. We have been traveling, we're still doing a lot of hikes, I'm being really active, and so I'm making sure that I still am proactive with adding my electrolytes. Especially when traveling, I just feel so much better. Everything's more regulated, my digestive system flows more smoothly, and I don't get leg cramps and stuff when I'm being proactive with my electrolytes. My mom's favorite flavor of Element is the grapefruit, so I brought her a batch so that she can take those home with her. And then Chris brought his chocolate caramel that he's still been drinking in the mornings. I'm sticking with unflavored, which has no sweeteners at all. If you want to try a free sample pack of Element, you can go to drinkelement.com/LAURAESPATH. They have a deal for all my subscribers where you can get a free sample pack with any purchase. Thanks to Element for sponsoring this video. Maybe let's start with like the first 50 years of your life and the way that you lived your life. You're a farmer, the type of food that you ate, and just kind of what that lifestyle looked like for you for the first 50 years.
Well, that's been a while back.
Yes.
But we grew up on a little dairy farm. Interesting enough, before all the technology and everything, we lived well milking 10 cows by hand, getting up at 5:30 in the morning to milk our cows, and farming with horses, and not having much overhead. Now a farmer needs maybe 150 cows to live like we did to pay for all his machinery and technology. But we ate almost everything that we grew, or grew almost everything that we ate, and had a big garden. Of course, we had our milk cows. We butchered hogs and the beef, and probably, I would say we didn't go to the store maybe every 6 weeks. Almost everything we grew. Yeah. And of course, we got up and worked, and breakfast was a big meal for us, but a lot of times we had a lot of homemade wheat cereal, ground through a coffee grinder, like a mush, and that was a favorite thing. And of course, our mom baked our bread, and things have changed in, like we ate a lot of corn and wheat, and in the last maybe 10 or 15 years, with genetic engineering, we've changed a lot of grains.
Why do you think the reason is for that?
Concerned more about production than quality, I think.
Yeah.
And of course, the use of fertilizers and insecticides and that type of thing. But genetically, as we've talked before, corn has been genetically modified to resist insects, and then when that gets in your gut bacteria, it's harmful to them, and we don't realize that. And wheat has changed a lot too. We canned hundreds of quarts. I say even really half gallons, because there was 5 kids in our family, and our whole family worked together. And that's one interesting thing, though. On the sideline, we were useful. We were necessary to sustain our family. Children were. And now kids don't really have work they have to do. That's why the technology is where it is.
Right.
Yeah. and we didn't have iPhones and all that. Actually, we had one telephone that was a single wire, and we had an operator and 10 people on the line. And if you wanted to talk to somebody, well, you had to go through the operator. Of course, the operators knew everybody's business, and all the 10 people on the party line knew what everybody else was doing. And one day my sister was trying to talk to a girl down the road about a mile away, and the phone reception wasn't very good, and Daddy jokingly said, "Open the window, she can hear you better."
Well, that was better than gossip social media back then, was just listening to the telephone lines.
We didn't have electricity, of course, didn't have a radio, and yet we didn't feel like we were hard up.
And then even for most of your adult life, after you moved out of home, you became a farmer then. You've had cows on this farm as long as I can remember.
Yeah. We milked a cow and made cheese, cottage cheese and hard cheese. The trouble with making the hard cheese was it was tempting to eat it before it got mature. And so we called it squeaky cheese when
before it aged?
Didn't have a chance to age.
Yeah.
But we've baked our own bread. When we got married, say 68 years ago, we bought a Lee flour mill, and that little flour mill, we still have it and still use it. I did have to rebuild the motor one time, and still grinding our cornmeal and flour.
Yeah.
Although we don't eat near as much bread as we used to.
Right. And then your house here is heated with a wood stove.
Yeah.
How long have you lived in this farmhouse?
57 years.
Yeah. So this house is heated with a wood stove, and so you're still chopping wood for that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now I do have a backup of propane if I need it. So
right.
As you get older, you think you might not feel like putting wood in the fire. You might have to use it. But so far we haven't gotten to that place yet. But an old house has changed a lot. Used to have 4 babies in it, and now we have great-grandchildren come back to visit.
Throughout the course of your life that I've only been alive for a portion, about a third of your life, the only health problems I've known that you have ever had was farming accidents, or a tree fell on you, or a tractor bucket fell on you, or something that happened with a farming accident, but other health issues. Talk about really the course of the last 90 years, what your health has been like.
Yeah, taking it for granted. And I think that, and I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but I would say, I think there's 2 reasons. I think what you eat really is a lot of who you are. Mm-hmm. And I think the foods have changed. The amount of processed foods and what we put into it has changed. That's the big thing. But we've tried to stay away from sugar a good bit.
Yeah.
For the last 35 years, I've tried not to eat desserts except on special occasions.
Right.
But with all the birthdays around, the special occasions come too often.
Right. And you've always been very disciplined about not snacking. And I think, if anything, your active lifestyle and the farm labor and the exercise that you do every day really contributes to that.
Yeah, I think doing work, farm work, has been a part of it. And as a person, God blessed me with a lot of energy. And for me, building fences and making hay and cutting wood is not a job. It takes care of a lot of extra energy. Now I don't have that extra energy. Up until I was 75, I did.
Well, you were still throwing kids in the pile of leaves last time we were here, and still, I think I remember you well into your 70s jumping over fences because it was quicker than opening the latch and climbing around.
But deer hunting and hiking and mostly working though. Mm-hmm. For me, but work has been therapeutic, not a chore.
Right.
Like Abe and I were talking the other day, he doesn't call farm work work. About 5 years ago, I turned my cows over. I used to have sheep and cows, but I turned them over to my grandson.
Yeah.
But I still help him some. I was going to say something, I don't know if you wanted to go there or not, but I think one of the healthiest things that happened to me, and I think food is really of first importance, but I think attitudes that people have, one of the biggest things that I think changed my life was when I was about 18 years old, I volunteered to go to Europe and work with refugees and cleaning up after the Second World War. And we had work camps for international work camps for people and that type of thing. And I began to be concerned about refugees and their needs. And since we've gotten married, we've focused on the needs of the people around us. And I think one of the healthiest things is not to be so preoccupied with yourself, but notice the people around you.
Yeah.
I went to Chicago to go to school, and we lived there for 3 years. And I noticed one thing. In the city, your neighbor is the threat because you see them competing for your space. In the country, a neighbor is an asset. And so that's the difference. The most lonely people in the world are not the people who live in isolated areas like we do. We have 1,000 square miles and only 7,000 people, but we're not as lonely as the people living in the cities.
Right.
Because there, somebody could die in your same apartment building,
Right.
and you wouldn't know it. And here, if somebody died within 30 miles, we'd know it before evening, you know.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really important things about maintaining a healthy lifestyle is being around a community and having people that support you and love you and that you, like you said, that you can support and help and love on.
And then another thing about health for me, I think the whole thing of experiencing forgiveness and extending that to people is a big thing. Holding grudges and being angry inside, like somebody said, unforgiveness hurts you. You don't forgive people for their sake, you forgive them for your sake. And so with the Christian faith, the thought of God's undeserved love, that we accept and really accept that and believe it and feel free from past mistakes or things done wrong, and then we extend that same thing to the people around us, that has a lot to do with health. You don't carry that burden when you go to bed at night, and when you wake up, you're free. Relationships with people, and sometimes I think the technology makes us more lonely. Somebody said one time, you're closer to the people far away, but you're further away from the people close. And I think there's some truth in that. Not everybody can be involved in rural living, but I wanted a place for my children to grow up where they could have farm life and learn responsibilities and stuff. And I asked the Lord to let me have 10 years, and He's given me 57 years there.
That's pretty special.
And like I say, it's not children being raised now, but great-grandchildren.
Yeah.
So that's it.
And it's been really special for me to come here and let my kids have the same memories with you that I had growing up of going for walks in the woods with Grandpa. And
You used to come every summer and spend time with us.
yeah. And make homemade bread with Grandma, and we would go pull weeds in the garden and go hunting in the woods.
But gardening is coming back in style. I see a lot of young people, like your brother and Anna and Wendy and all these. Gardening is coming back for a lot of people.
But even now, the seeds are different. You mentioned, tell me about the corn that you were talking about.
Yeah, and I have a friend who, from Iowa, who does corn research, you know, and he's very convinced that genetically making corn resistant to bugs is hard on
People in their health,
yeah.
And it really affects, it's just not the same corn that we were
And
eating
we really
before.
don't use as much wheat as we used to. I think wheat is not the same thing that it used to be. It's clear different.
And now you see corn syrup is in everything that you buy in the grocery store.
And the processed foods, I think, to me, sugar is a drug, and we try to stay away from that as much as we can. But I guess the corn syrup's put in there to compensate for the flavor that's lost in processing.
Right. And they take out all the nutrients, and then they have to find some way to preserve it so it'll last for years on the shelf. You'd think that being in such an environment or in such a community that has so many cows that you'd have access to local beef. But you really can't butcher it here and sell it here. It gets, when you had cows and Abe's cows, they get shipped off to, you know, probably somewhere in the Midwest and then processed and then sent back here to the local grocery stores. But it's not, that's just kind of the way that the government has regulated how you can process animals.
We have some people trying to work around that. Sometimes people own a cow together, but it's not very many people do it, but some people are doing that.
Right.
And there is one local farmer who's butchering his beef, but he has to go about 60 miles away to find somebody to butcher that.
But all the time when you were raising cows, you had to then sell them at market to then have them sent somewhere else?
Yeah, but we butcher around here too.
Yeah.
But you know what you're eating, that's the main thing, and what it's been fed. But there is a market now, for instance, if a farmer guarantees that his cows haven't had growth hormones or haven't had antibiotics, there's a premium, and people in the market are starting to pay a premium for beef that hasn't been given antibiotics or growth hormones.
Do you think that affects the animal or the beef, that when you then eat it, do you think it affects it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and us, yeah.
Yeah. Antibiotics is very noticeable. The carryover of antibiotics comes through to people.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any question about that.
Well, I know you're not actually old yet, okay? But what has been some challenges for you as you've gotten older?
I would like to tell a story about being old.
Okay.
I was preaching down in Southern Virginia and went to visit an old man. He was 95 and she was 94, and they were still keeping house together. And we sat on his porch, but out in his garden, there were oak trees about 6 inches apart where his garden used to be. But I was really fascinated, and this happened when I was about 70, and I thought 90 was old. But we were talking. He said, you know, when I was a boy, I sat around and listened to old timers talking about fighting in the Civil War. And that really amazed me. Well, here was a man who listened to people talk about fighting in the Civil War. And then he got all real sad. He said, but you know what? All the old timers are gone. He said, there's no old timers left. And he was 95. But he said the old timers all died off. There weren't any old people left. So somebody said old is always 15 years older than you are.
Right.
So when you're 95, you say, well, the old people all died off. There's none left.
You're not there yet. I'm still keeping up with you as we go for hikes, and you're still chopping wood, and I think there's a chicken on the roof.
A bird, yeah. One of the problems now is young people who want to buy a farm or would like to have a homestead have to compete. The agriculture land is becoming a part of the financial system. And so people like Bill Gates are buying up farmland as an investment.
Right.
And so the people who want to farm, young people wanting to start farming, have to compete with the investors. And that happened in South America. We were down in Ecuador, and 97% of the land is owned by 3% of the people. And so if a family wants to buy a place to live and grow their food and everything, they have to compete with somebody who's looking for a safe place to put their money.
Yeah.
And we're going that way.
Yeah. It's getting harder and harder to find places like out here where it's so rural and so remote, and you're not surrounded by people and stores and.
Although here you can still buy land for $1,000, maybe $2,000, but then say like in Iowa or Indiana or Ohio, you're going to be paying $20,000 or something for it.
Right.
I heard a joke about a farmer. They asked him what he would do if he won the lottery. He said, I'd just keep farming until I used it up.
I think that also contributes as to why they put corn syrup and all these processed foods come around, is because there's so much more profit in those things. The wheat that you're growing and processing can be sold for this. I've actually saw this morning that the price of a bushel of wheat is the same now as it was 50 years ago, but the cost of bread is 6 times as much. And so the profit margins for the processed foods grows and grows, but beef has a very small profit margin, or a lot of the hogs and things, farmers aren't making any more money on those things.
Well, this is what I was thinking. Back when a dollar was a dollar, you might say milk was $6 a hundred.
Right.
And maybe 30 years later, it's still $6 a hundred.
Yeah.
And that's why you need 100 cows instead of 10, because your profit.
Yeah, and the farmers aren't making any more now than they did before, but there's somebody in the middle, which is the regulators that are making more money.
And the other interesting thing is almost anybody else who produces something says, the production cost me this much and I want this much profit, and then this is the price they ask. But the farmer takes what everybody will give him.
Right.
He doesn't have anything to say about his price.
Yeah, he can't set that price at all.
Yeah.
You also did some intermittent fasting for a couple of years.
I did. For 35 years, I weighed between 5 pounds of 200. And about 4 years ago, I did intermittent fasting, which for me was skipping supper for a year. And I dropped down to the 170s. Now stay right 180.
Yeah.
But I'm eating 3 meals a day again, but I still kept my weight.
And I think the important part for you, especially as you age a little, is keeping that muscle mass, because you've been so strong your whole life, and I think that's what keeps you active and independent. And now is that you're able to just still be physically strong.
You enjoy walking and not grieving over the fact that you can't run, you know.
Right.
And enjoy watching your great-grandchildren race around the house.
Yeah. And I know you've had doctors in the past, like even recent years, that are just shocked that you don't take medications and your blood pressure is good and you're healthy, and I think they don't know what to do with you, the fact that you're not on a dozen prescriptions.
Well, we've enjoyed life, and it's good.
Yeah.
And part of it is having you.
Well, it's always special for us to be here, and we really love coming.
I watch with interest your journey with your carnivore diet.
Yeah.
And see the change it's made in you. That's been special. One of the secrets of growing old is to enjoy watching young people be young and not grieving. Daddy said one time, the secret was to not grieve over what you couldn't, but be thankful for what you could. And there's always things you can't do, but there's to focus on the things that you can do, enjoy them.
And I think that's one of the keys to improving your health, if you're not in a place that you're healthy and strong, is to focus on what can you do. You can't move out to the middle of nowhere and live on a farm, but you can find ways to be physically active. You could, find ways to cut out the sugar and the processed food that you're eating, and you can look for ways to, and have the good attitude that you were mentioning, and have the attitude of how can you be a service and a gift to others and love on other people and work to improve your health.
But I noticed, for instance, when your grandma was young, busy with 4 kids, she didn't notice that there were trees around. Now we sit in the swing, and she said, well, I just can't believe that there are all these beautiful trees around. So she's noticing things she never had time to notice before. Yeah. And I think that's interesting. Should be a part of old age, is to take time to appreciate things.
Right.
That you
missed when you were too busy.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I think the biggest danger for kids and old people is inactivity, though. Just sitting on the couch is bad.
Yeah, and technology contributes to that.
And your kids, for example, doing jiu-jitsu 5 days a week. And for me, since I'm not farming, I think the exercises for about 20 minutes every morning is a part of my job,
Well, we have some visitors behind us. No,
they're getting on your. Great.
Well, I appreciate it. I think I thank you for this. Was longer than I promised you, so I appreciate everything you're sharing.
Well, if you can get anything out of it, you
it's perfect.
Cut it out and fix it up and add it up.
No, it's so perfect. Thank you so much, and thank you for opening your home and sharing your time and your wisdom with us.
Well, you're the ones that have given us everything, so.
No. It's good to be here.
That old rooster came at the right time, didn't he?
All right, thanks, guys.